I'm Carrie, and this is Student Loan Chit-Chat. Thanks for joining me. If you're always wondering how come I seem to be filming in my gym wear, that's because I usually film on the weekend before I'm going to the gym. So that's why I'm usually in my gym wear. All right, what I want to talk about today are basically 12 red flags that I believe are just kind of, warning signs that you may be in student loan debt for years. And when I'm talking years, I'm talking decades. Like 10 years is gonna be a blessing if you can get out of it in 10 years. I created this list based on things I've read, based on things I've observed, and of course, the number one thing I've based it on, my own life experience. So I'm hoping that this list, and it's not any particular order for the most part, I'm hoping this list will kind of give you a guide on things to at least consider if you haven't considered it before you take on student loan debt. All right, so without further delay, here we go. One of the things that I think is a big red flag on whether or not you're going to be in student loan debt for a long time, and again, we're talking over 10 years. You are paying private school tuition to do what? A public service job. I have spoken to students, graduates, and I remember one person telling me years back, he said, I should have never ever gone to a private school to become a teacher. The tuition was outrageous. Honestly, if you know you're gonna go into public service work, okay, you know that's your life passion, you really should, in my opinion, reconsider whether or not you need to pay private student loans to do that. You don't need a private student loan degree to become a teacher, counselor, social worker, stuff like that. You can do that on a state school. Simply, the reason to consider it, it's how much the jobs pay. And you may find that your degree and the job that you're in, that job's not going to pay enough to pay off your degree. And I've done a couple of commentaries already on different videos about that. So private school tuition, yet you already know you want to be a public service worker. Something to seriously consider. Number two, a red flag that you may be in student loan debt for a very long time. You don't hold a single job for very long. You're the type you like to bounce around to different jobs. In fact, you may even be so comfortable you will quit a job without a job to go to. This can be very difficult in paying off your student loans, especially if you are a public service worker and you're trying to accumulate those 10 years, 10 years of payment while doing 10 years of service. If you're the type that's always bouncing around, okay, either for personal satisfaction, conscious, unconscious, commitment behaviors, whatever, okay, the list can be very lengthy on that. If you don't have the ability to stick to one job and really pull it through until that student loan is paid off, you may find it very difficult to pay off a student loan. And again, especially if you're trying to accumulate those 10 years to get public service loan forgiveness. And something that people need to also remember, when your loans are in forbearance, you are not accumulating public service credit, nor even if you're not public service and you still need to put in 10, 20 years, forbearance doesn't count. So all you're doing is you're delaying that. So every time you change a job, not so much when you change a job, but it's when you quit a job, you have no job to go to, or you don't have a job that qualifies for the forgiveness that you want. For example, you let's say you go from a public service job to a non-public service job. Well, that non-public service job, if you're hoping for PSLF, you're not going to get credit in that new job because it's not considered public service. So the ability to be able to stick to a job, stay at it until the student loan is paid off is a real factor, in my opinion, at being able to get out of debt. And by the way, I'm speaking from personal experience. I stayed in the same job at the same spot for 16 years. And part of that was due to the fact that I knew that if I was going to get PSLF, I could not be bouncing around. And yes, in education, you can bounce around to different schools and stuff, and people do that. And that would have been slightly different. But I just really, really felt, kind of put your nose to the grindstone, stay there, get it done until the bill is paid. People who cannot do that and are always bouncing back and forth may find that all it does is just delay in paying off your loan. All right, let's look at number 3. You allow entertainment shows to dictate whether or not you should work towards things like public service loan forgiveness or any sort of loan forgiveness. You believe Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman are the gurus of your financial well-being. They're not. All right? They're working for shareholders making an entertainment show. If I had listened to Dave Ramsey, and I've talked about this before in other videos, if I had listened to him, his rule was basically student loan forgiveness is a scam. If you don't believe me, Google it on YouTube. Dave Ramsey, student loan forgiveness is a scam. And over and over and over, he will tell people it's never going to happen. Don't try to pursue it. I don't listen to stuff like that. I separate the news from the talk shows and my own common sense and observations. So don't allow the entertainment shows to be what dictate whether or not you should apply for forgiveness or anything else with your finances, in my opinion. All right? Number 4. A red flag that you may be in student loan debt for a long time. And again, none of these flags by themselves mean anything, but a bunch of them together, I would be paying attention to it. Flag number 4, you are the first person in your family to have ever attended college. You have parents who have never been there. You don't have siblings who can guide you through. And the reason this is a red flag is because chances are you're going to be the first person that really is put through the student loan borrowing process. If you have no guides to help you, you may find yourself at 22 years old facing a 6-figure student loan. Don't believe me? Yes, it really does exist, all right? And I think I've even done some videos on it. You are the first person in your family to go. And sometimes that first person in the family that's going, they put too much trust in other people. Okay, they're putting too much trust in the admissions person and the guidance counselors and all of that instead of putting it into actual, experienced people. And you have to remember, especially people who are first generation, school is a business. The world of college is a business. So saying to a collegiate person, should I sign here? Well, yeah, they want you to sign there, okay? So first generation people, in my opinion, are especially at risk if they do not know the resources and the people to go to for help in student loan borrowing. Take a look at number 5. Oh, you are paying tuition on your dream school versus going to a school that's your actual budget. Okay, what's that phrase? It's champagne taste on a beer budget. You are paying tuition on your dream school because you're able to borrow all of this money. You don't actually have to see it, okay? You just know that it exists and it gets you there if you sign on the dotted line. So paying for your dream school versus paying what is actually within your budget, I believe puts you at great risk for long-term student loan debt. All right, let's see. Let's look at number 6. Oh, this is one of my favorites, and I've read about this a lot, and maybe you have yourself. You are majoring in a hobby. You are not majoring in a career. So in other words, you're taking in all of this student loan money, and what are you doing with it? You've just spent $80,000 for a photography degree. Yeah, I think there's a story that's actually out on the internet about that. Lots and lots of people in art coming out with 6-figure art degree bills. You need to, in my opinion, determine whether or not the degree you're going for, are you actually going for a career degree, or are you really just going for a hobby and you want to have a good time at a college? All right, something to think about. If you're going for a hobby, just get an apprenticeship, somewhere, all right? And maybe get some individual tutoring lessons by someone who has a little side gig on art and photography. You don't need to go, 6 figures in debt to be a photographer or an artist. All right? So there's something to think about. That is number 6. You're majoring in a hobby, not a career. And that's going to be it. And that actually, I should add, that can be a tough one because there are people who are very, very, very passionate about something, and it's easy to mistake that passion and take out a whole bunch of money on it. And really, if you really get down to it, it's a hobby that they've majored in. It's not a career. It's nothing that's going to lead them to being able to pay off your student loan bills or anything else. So just think about that. Let's see. Speaking of career, number 7, a red flag that you may be in student loan debt for a very long time. And we all know people like this. You're a career student. You are the person that's always going back to school. You always have a homework assignment due, okay? You've been doing this through your 20s, 30s, and 40s. And the danger with this, it's not that you're a career student, it's that you're a career student taking out, you got it, taking out student loans. Being a career student, again, kind of like that hobby thing, all right? Being a career student can be financially devastating in the long run if you're doing it under student loan money. There's also something else, and you know, I don't want to play psychologist or anything because I am no psychologist, but I sometimes ask myself, people who are career students, and we're not the people who go straight for the bachelor's, straight for the master's, they get out of school. We're talking the person who goes for their bachelor's and then they go and they, you know, dab around for a little bit in some other degree. They don't ever actually get a degree in it, and then they leave school, then they dabble back. You know who I'm talking about, okay? But one of the things that has crossed my mind over my many, many years of holding a student loan, is it possible that sometimes there's an avoidance issue going somewhere? Okay, is it an avoidance issue in paying off the student loan debt? Is it an avoidance issue in committing to a career? Is it something deeper inside them? Is there some sort of avoidance issue as to why they keep going back to school? There are people, college environment can be awesome. I absolutely love the campus, the collegiate environment. Some people have a very hard time departing with that. And for some people, it's sort of like, I believe it could become a safety net. It's like the security blanket. It's always around. And it's always easy to get back into, because what do? Just take out loans. So the person who is a career student, maybe they get degree after degree. Maybe they go back and they don't obtain any more degrees. They just keep going to school. But the problem with it is they're never actually paying off the debt that they already have. So all this does is it's a circle of, you know, forbearance, go back to school, take on more debt, back to forbearance, go back to school, take on more debt. Because every time you're back in school, at least most of the times, you can actually stop the current student loan bill while you're back in school. So again, I'm no psychologist, but I do have to wonder at times if they're avoiding something. I remember getting my degree in the 80s and bumping into a few students who had told me, oh yeah, I'm in, like, you know, my 9th year of college. And I'm thinking, don't you want to get out? And you begin to realize they really just love the collegiate environment. Love the collegiate environment. Don't borrow massive debt to do it, is my suggestion after holding a 6-figure student loan for decades. All right? I say, what number was I on? You guys know this. These videos are informal. I like it that way. Okay, we're on number 8. Okay? A red flag that you may be in student loan debt for a very long time. And in my opinion, that's like over 10 years. You sign off on your student loans without knowing how much you're signing off on. I'm guilty of that. I'm totally guilty of that. I would just sign on the line. I wanted to get a degree in this, I sign on the line. You wanted to get a degree in that, you signed on the line. But we really had no idea how much we're signing off on. Now, did we? At least most of us didn't, okay? Well, most of us don't, all right? You just sign. You put too much trust, again, into that counselor. And when you sign and you really don't know what you're signing off on, that's a really good sign. You will have a student loan debt for a very long time. Why? Because you have no roadmap. There's nothing guiding you. There's nothing putting a stop there's no stop, pause, time out measure. Hey, we're taking on too much debt. This isn't going to work. This is the career I want to have. This is the current loan debt I have. This is not going to work. I'm never going to be able to pay it off, yada, yada. We just keep signing. That's not good. Number 9. I think this is one that many of us fall for. I know I certainly did. And that is, you're unaware of how difficult it will be to pay off that student loan bill when all the other bills of life come crashing at you. I remember getting my student loan projected bill. And I literally remember them going, well, it should be about, I think it was like $350 or whatever a month. And I remember thinking, well, at the time I was married, and between him, myself, and all that, I'm like, okay, we good. But what I didn't really stop to think about was, where do I want to live? What type of lifestyle do I want to have? How many hours do I want to have to work each week to pay the bills? What other bills in life are going to come crashing down at me that I've not yet prepared for? In other words, what I found out is that it's very easy when you're sitting in the chair in your dream school, okay? It's very easy when they say something like, oh, this bill's only going to be about $300, $400 a month. But what you have not stopped to figure out is that's just an estimate. That's not actually factoring it all in. That's not the interest, all your forbearances you may have, all the pauses and breaks you may have. It doesn't count any of that added interest. And they're just giving you a projection. So when you realize on graduation, you all of a sudden go, well, wait a minute here. I need a car. I need to get auto insurance. I need cell phone, lights. Now, we may sit there and go, well, obviously, that's just so easy to figure out. But it's easy to forget that, especially in your 20s. And I know I blew it in my 30s, okay? But especially in your 20s, when everything in life seems so magically paid for. You know, you went from your parents paying for the bills, and now the student loan people are paying your bills. You still haven't gotten out there and work to realize, oh my goodness, do I want to be a barista at Starbucks on top of a full-time job? So I'm basically working 7 days a week to pay all of this. It's very easy to forget that a $300-400 bill could be the equivalent of a car payment in full, or it could be the equivalent of your electric, your cable, and I'm not talking expensive cable, I'm talking like $10 a month on YouTube. It could be your electric, your cable, your Netflix, your gas, all wrapped into one. It's very, very easy to dismiss it and say $300 to $400, yeah, I can handle that. But then you actually get down to that monthly budget, you're living on your own in your apartment, all of a sudden you're like $300-400, that's a lot of money. And that's considered a small student loan bill. Okay, there are people with, $1,000 a month in a student loan. Mine would have been $1,000 a month if I hadn't been on income based. Okay, so anyways, that's something to consider. A student loan bill seems easy until you have to pay all the other bills on top of it. All right, 10. Let's see, a red flag that you may have student loan bills for a really long time. You are not willing to compromise. You will not compromise on the type of degree you get. You are not willing to compromise on the school you attend. You are not willing to compromise with your parents. When they say to you, we'll do this if you'll do that. You are, I won't say hard-headed, but for lack of better words, you have determined your life path and nobody's getting you off of it, and it doesn't matter what highly experienced people say. You are not willing to compromise. This, to me, is really important, especially for young people to understand. One of the best things, in my opinion, that young people can do today, if you are on your own, especially paying your student loans, go to a community college for 2 years. Forget the 4-year state dream if you don't have any assistance, okay? And yeah, life isn't fair, okay? But if I had no status, if I had no parent to help me get through school, I would be doing a community college, part-time job, then a state school and part-time job. You can save in the tens and tens and tens of thousands doing that. Because here's the bottom line, folks. When you graduate, guess what? The only person that's going to pay your bills, most likely, is you. All right? So especially if you're on your own, be willing to compromise. All right? Be willing to compromise on the type of school you go, the degree you go, and the degree you are going for. All right, we got 2 more here. 11. A red flag that you will be in student debt for a long time. You have majored in a degree or attended a school, sometimes often one and the same, that you're never going to use. You're never going to use it because you found out the school was a fraud. You're never going to use it because you realize that career really doesn't speak to your spiritual inner nature. Basically, you have attended a school and or majored in a degree you have no intention of using. If you read student loan stories, a lot of the issues that they're having with the high default rate is students who attended schools that are not buying into the fact that their degree was any good. That they're like, no, we got defrauded. No, this school was bad. When you don't believe in the degree you got, when that degree holds no value, to you, chances are you're going to do what a lot of other students in default have done. Guess what? You're just going to default on it. You're just simply going to say, I'm not going to pay it. And this is also a very financially unwise move to make, okay? Because student loan defaults can keep you from getting transportation. You want to take out a loan for a car. It can keep banks from lending you any sort of money at all. Don't forget student loan defaults all the way into retirement, through retirement, to your deathbed. Okay, they can garnish your wages. They can also freeze your bank accounts. They don't need notice on that. Student loan defaults can keep you from getting certain jobs, especially if you want to go into the military. Yes, I can tell you certain military clearances, you need to have an impeccably clean slate. Okay, I didn't even qualify for that impeccably clean slate. In other words, student loan default, excuse me, it's not just as simple as saying, well, I don't believe in the school, I don't like the degree, so I'm not going to pay and just let it default. There are repercussions, seen and unseen, when that student loan goes into default. And if you look up on student loans, there is story after story. If you don't believe in the degree that you got, you don't buy into the school that you went into, and you feel you were ripped off, okay, real or imagined, chances are, once you go into default on a student loan and you don't see the world crashing down around you immediately, you're just gonna keep on letting that loan go into default. But the problem is, at some point, it all catches up. At some point. Always remember that, all right? I mean, I don't want to sound like a mother hen or anything, but, you know, we can delay tactic all we want, but at some point when something isn't working, it's going to come crashing down. So if you don't believe in that degree that you got, and you look at it all as just a huge waste of money, chances are very, very likely that once you go into default, you're not going to pay it. But it is going to eventually catch up with you in the garnishments that can be done, the jobs you can be denied. You can even be denied, obviously, housing, okay? That includes renting an apartment, wanting to take out a mortgage. Student loans matter, and the status of that student loan. You know, how long it's been in forbearance. Has it ever been in default? It matters, because default basically shows you can't or you won't pay your loan. And that is a risk that most lenders don't want to accept. So consider that, all right? And also on that note, there are a lot of schools that were deemed to be basically fraudulent, and there are programs out and available that can hopefully help you clear that student loan debt, okay? For the schools that were considered fraudulent, like the Corinthian schools. A whole video in itself. All right, last one. The last red flag that I believe will... Well, it's just a red flag that I believe you're going to have student loans for a very long time, and that is that you accept student loans are a part of life and you're willing to die with them. I have talked to people who have literally said, well, that's just the way it is, I'm going to have to die with them. Why would you do that to yourself? Why would you take yourself into retirement with a 15% garnishment on your student loan? And that's if they don't simply close out your bank account. The federal government owns the money. They lent it to you. And so going into retirement with student loan debt and the willingness to accept that, I think is really, I won't say unwise, but I think it can be financially perilous. I might be able to say, okay? So people who sit and go, well, you know what, student loans are part of life, nothing I can do about it, so I'm just gonna accept it and take it through life with me. I read a story the other day. I'll probably do a YouTube video on it, possibly tomorrow, and it's a woman who's had a student loan debt for 35 years, okay? There are some people who believe that forgiveness happens once that loan has existed for, say, 20, 25 years. Forgiveness does not happen after 20, 25 years if you've not made 20 to 25 years worth of payments. Okay, you got to remember that. It's not just, well, I've had the loan for 20 years, they're going to forgive it, so I'm just going to write it out for 20 years. It doesn't work like that, people. It does not work like that, okay? If in 20 years you've only made 13 years of payments, well, you still haven't reached the 20-year payment mark or the 25-year payment mark, all right? So anyways, those are my, at least for today, those are my 12 red flags on whether or not you're going to carry student loans for a really long time. And I'm guilty of most of that. And hopefully this video can help keep you from being guilty of most of that. And if anything, it just kind of gives you some warning flags to look at. And I could throw in one more, which is number 13. I know it's for lots of people, that's an unlucky number, so I didn't want to stick that on the YouTube channel. But a 13th one you could say also is if you are married and you and your spouse, both of you, or even one of you, just doesn't understand or respect the value of money. And money can be spent as if, you know, it grew on trees, but nobody is really being in charge of where it's going. That can also be a really big red flag that you as a couple might have student loans around for a very long time because no one's being the real responsible adult saying, whoa, wait a minute, let's do something. And even if one of you is being the responsible adult, if the other one does not respond accordingly, that can cause issues also. So I guess that's number 13. All right. Anyways, I'm getting ready to head to the gym. It's the best part of my week, all right? So I hope you have a great Saturday afternoon. I'm Carrie. This is Student Loan Chit-Chat. I do hope you will consider subscribing and have a great day. Bye.